Hi there. A lot of consultants on the bill today. I was trying to think of some different ways to describe consultants this morning, and not all of them started with C, so that was good. Consultants really, though, are, I guess, the embodiment of what I want to talk to you about today. And that's the need for the cross-fertilisation of skills, of ideas and experience between different organisations and industries. Very much the embodiment of the need for people who have transferable skills. Now, as a radio professional, you have transferable skills by the bucket load. It's certainly true that other sectors like the armed forces are much better at promoting the brilliantly transferable skills which they give their employees. Even if they're totally new to an industry, a company is generally happy to take on a retiring army officer because we've all had it literally drilled into us that either the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, they're going to have given them brilliant management, interpersonal and organisational skills, and that they're going to do brilliantly. But I want to persuade you that the industry should think about exactly the same way about people who've worked in radio, and that could mean a whole range of opportunities for you. There are lots of reasons that might matter, of course. Well, it might be the reason to cope with a bit of a career crisis, perhaps as the result of some cuts from DQF or a company merger or a change in personal circumstances. But it could be much bigger and much more important than that. I do rather hesitate to reference that slightly mystical and often ridiculed concept of the big society, but I do think that everyone benefits when we take our talents and we deploy them in a new sector, even if we do that while staying in our main job. I speak from experience. Until the end of last year, my career was pretty much all about radio, but I'd always had an interest in working in other sectors, and so from about my mid-20s, I built up a portfolio of work in other sectors. Even while I was employed, I served on the board of two major arts organisations, two large independent schools. I ran research for the NHS on maternity health, and I advised companies on their communications and marketing. And it quickly became clear to me that people had asked me to get involved because they knew something that I didn't. And that is that working in radio gives you brilliantly transferable skills which other industries are crying out for. So, what are my 5 amazing skills you get from radio? Well, the first is a deep understanding of your product and where it sits in your market. You could call it competitive awareness. Think about it. You know where your show sits within the whole station. You know where the station sits within the radio landscape in your marketplace. And you understand radio's place in the overall media landscape. You know the different strengths of each medium and the different characteristics of each station or each product. So you know how to make your product stand out and be different. And boy, if you can explain to a listener or an advertiser why your CHR station is different from the one just down the road, you are onto a winner. For me, that kind of insight has helped in lots of different sectors. One of my roles is on the board at Gordonstoun Schools, which is quite local to where I live. It's a pretty unusual place. Now, for years, Gordonstoun's reputation has been the school that Prince Charles and his father went to.
Where the river flows like blood.
But it's been working really hard in recent years to explain to prospective pupils and their parents what's different about it, why it's special, why it's different from other independent boarding schools. And as you can see from this film, it identified adventure and service, the service that students undertake, as really key. So it worked out its place in the market and promoted what was different. I found out recently, for example, that the first woman to attend a fire as an active firefighter in the UK was a student at Gordonstoun, because we had students actually serving the active fire force before they were allowed in the regular fire brigade. So that kind of promoting of what's different about a place has been immensely rewarding for me. So the second skill I want to highlight is customer understanding. Very few people in business spend as much time as the people in this room do thinking about customers and what they want. And what makes your level of customer understanding even more impressive is that many of you have 2 sets of customers, listeners and advertisers. And what's even more impressive than that is that those 2 sets of customers are pulling you in different directions. Explain that to someone in maybe the transport sector who's balancing the demands of tourist and business travellers, or someone in local government whose planning strategy is trying to satisfy council taxpayers and an inward investing company, and you're going to be hot property. So the next skill I want to highlight to you is something that I bet you never thought would come in handy, and that's regulation. Or as most industries call it, red tape. Every business has regulation to cope with, but not many have as much as radio. And whichever bit of radio you work in, you're getting used to working within the rules. At the BBC, it might be service licences and compliance procedures. In commercial and community radio, it's things like Ofcom and the ASA. It's all the stuff you have to think about when you're doing your daily work. Regulatory understanding is something that translates into every sector. Now, when I was at Radio Centre, I did a huge amount of it, terribly dull. But it's been a really big part of what I'm doing, and I've managed to transfer it into working, for example, on the board of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, which is kind of at the extreme end. Not that regulation is an extreme sport, obviously, but you could put your regulatory understanding into all sorts of contexts. So far, we've got competitive awareness, customer understanding, and coping with red tape. Let's move quickly on to something that's quick. Responsiveness. Radio is fast to react to news, to technical problems, to competition, to budget cuts. It's faster than any other medium. By and large, even the internet doesn't create and publish content exactly simultaneously. Now, trust me, I'm working for the NHS at the moment, so I know what slow looks like. But because I also know what fast looks like from my time in radio and how much fast can achieve and empower people, I can help them change gear little by little. Unless you've worked in radio, you cannot appreciate the speed and efficiency with which you guys get ideas on air. But take that energy and determination into other sectors and you'll go far. Now, the fifth great skill is probably the most over-rehearsed, creativity. Yeah, we're all very creative. But really, you are. And I don't just mean in making content. You're creative with resources, with budgets, with content, with clients' ideas. As a presenter, you're doing the same thing day after day, but a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit more. As a sales exec, you find new reasons to approach that client again and again until they buy and buy again. Now, all organisations need creativity. I sit on the board of Scottish Opera, and with my colleagues, we've been supporting the company through a period of immense creativity. The company has commissioned more new operas in the last 4 years than ever before. Now, don't worry, there's not going to be any singing. But we've commissioned work from authors like Alexander McCall Smith, composers from the film world like Craig Armstrong, and big names like James Macmillan. For the executive, for the staff, having a board which understands and supports creativity has been immensely important. Now, as you know, creativity means being courageous enough to risk failure as well as success. But not everybody knows that or can support an organisation as it tries new things. So there you have it. 5 amazing skills you maybe didn't even know you had. And hopefully getting you thinking about those 5 skills has made you think about 5 or 10 or 20 more. Because whether it's joining the board of your kids' school, whether it's helping a local charity or choosing to move into a whole new sector, they will need and want people like you, because making great radio makes you great. Thank you.
That for me was actually an amazing session because I've just left commercial radio as a full-timer to set up a radio-related business, and a lot of thinking that I've been doing myself is actually what did I do in my day job in radio that I now have to do in my day job in my own business. And yeah, it certainly sparked a lot of thinking, and especially with the industry the way it's going, many people might be thinking about different ways and different ways of making a living. Yeah, I thought it was really, really good.